Welcome back. I'm Maggie, the host of Neighbors Helping Neighbors, the podcast from Father Joe's Villages, a beacon of hope for 75 years. This is a continuing series where we explore homelessness, its causes, and solutions to the issue. Our guests include experts and leaders in this space, people with lived experience and unique perspectives on homelessness. If you'd like to learn more about our mission, visit us at neighbor.org and follow us on social media at Father Joe's Villages. Today, we're exploring our meeting basic needs pillar of care, most notably our food programs and services, as well as shelter and how they affect and benefit children and families experiencing homelessness. We have a distinguished guest with us today, Chair of the County Board of Supervisors, Nora Vargas. And with me, as always, is Deacon Jim, my co-host and the president and CEO of Father Joe's Villages. Welcome, both of you.
Chair Vargas, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for being here.
We've been excited about today.
Yes.
I'm excited to be here too.
Please take a moment to introduce yourselves.
Well, my name is Nora Vargas. I'm the chair of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. I have the privilege of being the first Latina, first woman of color, first fronteriza in the 200 years of the county of San Diego. And so it's truly an honor for me to serve. District 1 is the district that I represent. And I also have the honor and privilege of serving as the chair of SANDAG, the San Diego Association of Governments, and the governor's appointee to CARP, the California Air Resources Board, which when people say, well, you wear a lot of hats, you're chair of everything. And I say, well, the good news about that is that for the first time you have government entities talking to each other because I happen to be chairing all of them. So it works out really well.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah.
Great.
Happy to be here.
Well, thank you. By the way, I'm also very proud, since I'm a Latino, I'm very proud that you're in the position.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for all you've been doing to date. And I pray for that continue, right? So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And as Maggie said, I'm Deacon Jim, and I always like to take an opportunity just to explain the comprehensiveness of our programs, because sometimes we have new listeners and new viewers. So it's good for them to know. And as Maggie mentioned, we're entering our 75th year. Right, we're going to have a great celebration next year. But we've been doing it for 75 years. 365 days a year. Situations become even graver on the street, unfortunately, and so we're there. We're there with our comprehensive services. We have a federally qualified health center, right, and it has primary care. In addition to that, we have our substance use clinic. We have a behavioral health clinic, mental and psychiatric clinicians. We have our dental clinic within that. We started Street Health, as the chair knows. So we started that in 2019. In fact, that was recognized in the recent months by the Board of Supervisors. And I appreciate that as a model for the community at large. And we're very pleased with that. Right? And that's grown tremendously. We now have 3 vans that go out 5 days a week, morning and afternoon, right? With not only clinicians but outreach workers as well. So it's been saving a lot of lives, actually. And then in addition to that, we're gearing up to establish a detox center. We know that in the county there's 78 detox beds, 2 of which are in the city of San Diego. And with God's help and always to His glory, we hope to have one established by the end of the first quarter of next year, adding 44 more beds into that complement, which is really fantastic. It's going to save lives. And then recovery and sober living beds as well that will support that population. And then in addition to that, we have our, as Maggie mentioned, the meals that we serve, 1 million meals a year, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, our 2 dining rooms, and just basic things like shelter. The almost 1,000 beds that we have shelter on a nightly basis. To that safety line that we have available for those who are on the streets each and every single night. Employment is very important. We know that with employment, there comes income, and with income, there's self-sufficiency, right? So we have a vocational training in various disciplines, and that's extended to our community as well. And then we have our therapeutic childcare center. We're going to be focusing on families and children. I know that's near and dear to your heart, so I'm excited about having that conversation. In addition to that, we know that housing is really what breaks the cycle of homelessness. So we have our Turning the Key initiative, introducing 2,000 affordable housing units into the market, either through the acquisition or refurbishment of motels or just new construction. Right? So we have, you remember Chair Vargas, St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa. You've toured that, and I appreciated your time there. 407 homes, right? The largest of its kind for our population. We have 5 more. I don't know if I've caught you up on the fact that we have 5 more in the pipeline.
That's amazing.
That's another about 250 beds actually that we'll make available throughout those 5, and we'll be venturing into Oceanside. So 2 of those 5 will now be in Oceanside. So we're working diligently on that. That breaks the cycle of homelessness, right? Because we know all the other shelter beds are good. We need to get people off the streets immediately. We don't have enough of them, and start working with people and applying the services. But at the end of the day, we need that housing. That's what really breaks the cycle of homelessness. So anyway, so that's a whirlwind of what we do, right? And we're blessed to be able to do it each and every single day. And I've always appreciated your support in our endeavors.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Chair Vargas, as Deacon mentioned, you've been a strong advocate for children and families for some time. Can you tell us about what inspires your passion for this cause?
As I was thinking about the work that I have the honor and privilege of doing every day, I think about how the truth is I was very privileged as growing up. I grew up in Tijuana. I think some people know that. I grew up in Tijuana on the other side of the border. And I grew up in a family where, my parents made it so that I never had to worry about anything, right? And so I was very blessed, and they had the tools to be able to provide, a roof over our head, food, and opportunities to have fun. And I grew up in a bubble thinking that everybody was having the same experience. And it wasn't until a little bit later when as I was growing up to realize I went to public schools in Tijuana all my life, but I never realized that there were so many kids, that also had a lot of challenges. And so I think as I was growing up, I started seeing that not everybody had the same opportunities and not everyone was experiencing what I was experiencing. And so to me, I think that's what really has motivated me to be engaged in public service and to do the work that I do every day, and particularly with children. When I was at Southwestern College and I was a trustee at Southwestern College, I started really trying to better understand so many of our students being unsheltered. And we created a policy where we, approved so that people could take showers in our gym that we had just built. And, trying to think about what else could we do. But then as I started digging deeper, I realized a lot of our young students didn't have access to food either. So we started the Jack Kitchen. It was the brilliant idea of staff members. I supported it as a board member, but it was really looking at, really meeting people where they're at and really understanding and having conversations with the community members that when we think about homelessness and when we think about unsheltered populations, we think about the folks that are on the streets and the people when you go to a ball game or things of that nature. But there's a whole bunch of other folks that are behind the scenes that people don't know, right? Like the thousands of kids that are at Willow Elementary in San Isidro who are unsheltered and who we don't even know and we don't see because they're sleeping at aunt's house or they're from one place to another in their car. And so that really, to me, started really being of concern. And what else could we do to make it better, right? Because we are the 4th or 5th largest economy in the world as a state. And to me, it's shameful that a child will go to sleep hungry or without shelter. I think we have failed our kids when we allow that to happen. And so anything that I can do to be able to change that, it continues to be my top priority. And when I started digging into the work that the county was doing at the time, the county was beginning to change in terms of the work that it was taking place. And this is about 5 or 6 years ago, 7 years ago. But there's so much that needed to be done. And so I felt that I can bring a very different perspective to really begin to tackle these issues from a different place. We were sending money back when it came to CalFresh. It was money that was coming from the federal government. And we weren't, and the answer that I always got was, well, we're doing outreach, but people don't want it. Well, because people don't trust government. And because government, many times people don't look like the people and people are fearful because they come from other places where they might feel that, they're scared. And so I think the outreach and the community connection is so important for us to be able to do that. And so it's been really wonderful to be able to be there in the last 4 years and see how we've been able to transition that. And
there's so much to be done. You use a term that I use quite often. Maggie knows that it's that meeting people where they are, right? I mean, not expecting them just to come into us or to fit their needs in just a cookie cutter approach. That doesn't always work. I mean, we think about that congregate settings. The congregate settings are not for everyone. They're not for families, right? We need to accommodate families in units, right? Because that's more conducive to their health and their well-being and being able to move forward. And it's just so many of those examples have to do with meeting them where they are. Let's evaluate, what is it that you need, right? These are the services that we have, and how can we best apply them to be effective in your life, right?
Well, and there's so much stigma, right? There's so much stigma around poverty. There's stigma around mental health. There's stigma around all these issues that people aren't poor because they want to be poor. People are not, homeless because they want to be homeless. And you keep hearing all this nonsense from folks. And if you really think about it and you really start getting to know folks who are experiencing being unsheltered, every person, each one of them is a human being with a story. And I've heard folks who have told me, right, like, it took 10 times for somebody to reach out to me. And it was finally when I felt like somebody gave me some love that I figured it out. And then I was able to connect. Or other folks that said, like, I was so embarrassed because I didn't want anybody to know in my family that I was going through this difficult thing, because then they think I don't know how to manage my money. So there's so many experiences. But for some reason, as society, we've decided that everybody who's unsheltered just fits into this one box.
Right.
And I'm happy to share with you that today, today's Thursday, and we did a press conference to highlight the work that we're doing around Care Court, right? And we were everybody was a little skeptical about what Care Court would do or wouldn't do. And out of the over 200 folks that have, gone through this process, 71 of them have actually now, have been served. And it's a partnership between the County of San Diego Behavioral Health Team, their case managers, and public defenders. And they have a unit that's specifically focusing on this. And then also the judges, right? And what they said today was, it was only with collaboration and compassion can we get this done. And I think that's what we can't forget. And I think that's what Father Joe's has been doing for such a long time, for 75 years. And I think for a long, long time, we've thought or believed that government can be compassionate, that government is just sort of transactional, and then we're like, check, check, check. And what I remind our county team, because we have a fabulous county team, 20,000 employees who, all of them got into public service for a reason, right? And it's just reminding them that we can make a difference, and we need to continue to think outside the box about how we help people. And yes, we've never done something before, but it's okay. We got to figure it out together.
Right, right. That's right. Just because we've done it a certain way in the past, right? You're absolutely right. And with, people you're mentioning the stigma, the preconceived notions of individuals. When I also hear, like you, as you mentioned, that people want to be on the streets, right? The reality is when you get to know them and you find out why they feel that way, right? And maybe they've been victims of domestic violence, right? Maybe they have PTSD. Maybe they're claustrophobic, whatever it is. So if you're able then to address their situations, then you're able to draw them in. You're able to draw them in not only to shelter, but then to other services. And that's when they can move forward.
I have to tell you that one of my favorite stories in the last, I try to keep track of these stories because, again, we're talking about real human beings, right? And I like sharing the stories. The veteran program that was started that we were able to expand, right? We, I think, are at over 1,000 people who are former veterans who were homeless or unsheltered and who are now have permanent housing. And one of the gentlemen that I met at the beginning, he said to me, Ms. Vargas, I have my cat with me. He says, I get to wash my clothes. I get to make my own food, and I get to have a great life. And then number one, I remind myself how much we take things for granted, of all the things that we all do every day that we take. I got to go wash my dishes. I got to go and for this gentleman, having the autonomy to be able to do that, right? He was a former veteran who had PTSD, who had been in a difficult place, worked with real estate, local real estate folks to be able to get him a space, and he's in permanent housing. And to me, it's like the dignity that comes with that, right? And how he talked about it. And I'm like, how is it that folks who have fought for us, who have been on the front lines to make sure that we have the freedoms that we have, would be out in the streets? Like, that is just, to me, not what we should be doing as government or as communities. And so those kinds of programs, I think, give me hope for the work that we can do and the partnerships that we can have to make sure that people are housed permanently, and that's exciting.
And there's always hope, and that's extremely important, because I think a lot of times people are lose hope, right, or appear to be hopeless. And I mean, I get asked by the media more often than not now, don't you get overwhelmed? No, don't you wonder whether you're making a real difference, right? And that never occurs to me. I don't have time to be overwhelmed, right? We don't have time to be overwhelmed. I mean, the reality is that we're making a difference in people's lives each and every single day. Are they some that are more challenging than others? Absolutely. Are the numbers getting worse? You've heard the statistic that, and over the last 30 months, each and every single month, more people are falling onto the streets than are being helped into housing. That's sobering, right? But that shouldn't overwhelm us. What that should mean that we're called to action. That means we need to do more. What do we do then to stop that hemorrhaging almost, right?
And I also think that if you think about, because we hear about there's more people out there. Well, how much is it that actually people now feel comfortable coming out and talking about it, right? Doesn't mean that they didn't exist before. I think sometimes we just assume, right? And we do the point and count. We do all of these different, we have systems and databases to count folks. But the truth is that government really truly is changing now, right? You have a county that is wanting to work in partnership with community and with organizations. You have each of the cities, right? I convened the 18 cities after we declared homelessness a public health care crisis in the county, and bringing in 18 cities. And I love the fact that it was nonpartisan, right? Everybody came with their own political background and what they thought about things. But in the end, we put politics aside, we came together and we thought, okay, what could we do? What's not working and what's working? And, there's some things that we were just gonna have differences on whether or not, we should have sober living at all times or not. There's just philosophical questions that, issues that, maybe do cut across party lines. But in the end, I think we all wanted one thing, and that's to make sure that people were housed and that they were safe and that they were able to be treated with dignity. And so we were able to find some opportunities to work together. And I think that's the greatest lesson of all, right? That yes, there's a lot of differences that we have, even across party lines, but in the end, we can find commonalities to get things done. And if we all continue to focus that way, we can actually, do what we're supposed to do, which is, help our communities.
What would you say is making it difficult for families to thrive in San Diego and maybe fall into homelessness?
I think it's the cost of living. Cost of living is so expensive, the economy, jobs and opportunities haven't kept up with the needs, right? I mean, I think when I first became a supervisor, I was meeting with the director of Health and Human Services, and he says, what is the biggest issue? Like, why did you run for office? Why are you doing this? And I said, because I want to eradicate poverty. He looked at me like, okay. And I said, look, I know I'm not supposed to say that out loud, right? I'm saying it here now, 4 years later, because I feel comfortable enough to say that we should be talking about that more, that people should not be in poverty, not in the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world. And we got to figure this out together, right? What does that look like? And how do we make sure that people have, trajectories to be able to succeed and even have conversations about building wealth, all sorts of different things. But in the end, to me, it's the cost of living is so expensive, and salaries are not where they need to be for folks, and it's not keeping up. Even if you think about our seniors, right? We have in District 1, for instance, you're going to have people who are older than 55, which I'm almost there, are going to be the highest number of folks in my district by the year 2030, and how many, Social Security doesn't keep up with inflation at the way that it should. And it was never meant to be a retirement system or a retirement plan, but people really are not able to, save up for retirement. And so the largest number of population right now that we have, right, increasing, continues to be senior citizens, personas de la tercera edad. And to me, I'm like, how do we let that happen? And how do we build housing? Like, I was just at a grand opening for the MAC project, and they did an opening where they did a public-private partnership, and it's going to be affordable housing. And a couple of the folks in that housing unit, I think it's going to be 101 homes, and it's really beautiful, which I think to me is the most important thing, right? Is it somewhere where people actually feel like the dignity and a great place to live? But in addition to that, some of the homes were targeted specifically for folks who had been unsheltered. They're going to have wraparound services, and they're going to have people who live from affordable housing, who are at the lower income levels, and help them to get out of there so that other people can come in later. To me, I think that's exactly what we need to be doing, right? Because I think we can focus so much on the actual problem, but I think how do we bring solutions? Mm-hmm. It's not just building more houses, right? I mean, I don't want to get all geeky on you and talking about RENA numbers and all that good stuff, right? And the mandates that we have from the state. Mm-hmm. But we continue to build more luxury homes, and we're not building enough affordable or middle income homes, right? Mm-hmm. And when you think about what that looks like, I mean, how is it possible that we're asking people to rent a place for $3,000 a month?
Right.
How does that even happen, right? And so, many of our families are living, 2 or 3 families together, where, people are making do where they can. And then I think the other part that we don't talk a lot about is that because we are in the binational community and the border, a lot of people get to go live in Tijuana, right? I always talk to folks about this. I say, if we didn't have the binational community, the border, our numbers for unsheltered populations would probably be as high as Los Angeles and San Francisco. Because think about how many hours people are spending now at the border, to cross the border every day. And we have about 200,000 people who go back and forth every day, who live and work in the United States, right? And those are people who are lucky enough to be able to go back and forth every day. And so they're living in Tijuana because it's less expensive.
Right.
People who work for the county live in Tijuana, right? And so I think as a region, we have to think about how do we have housing that it's actually affordable. Eggs are expensive. Everything is expensive. And so I think with programs like we have in the county, I think we help supplement that, right? So like the food programs are so important. And we've had a lot of conversations after COVID about making sure that it's culturally appropriate food, right? Don't give somebody something that they would never eat, because then it's like, I want to really figure out a way to get away from that whole process of people having to stand in line to get food.
With the SNAP benefits?
Just like, we have food to give out this weekend or whatever, and people have to stand in long lines to get food like we did during COVID. I'm like, it just shouldn't be that way, I want refrigerators in every corner, and like people can just go get food and things of that nature. So I know I can't do that, but
but you bring up excellent points. And I mean, there's been a 100% increase in families that have fallen into homelessness, right? When we consider the point in time count year on year, right? I mean, think about that. I mean, the number of families, you mentioned seniors, absolutely. Yeah. That more seniors are aging out, and the seniors, especially when they've been chronically on the street. I mean, first of all, they age faster. Yeah. They age 20 years faster, right? Biologically. And then the issues become even more astute, right? And chronic. And so how do we address that? I mean, we're finding that the aging population actually needs help with convalescence, with recuperative care, with even hospice.
Yes.
Right. So that's something we've been giving that more and more thought here at Father Joe's Villages as to how we can meet that need, because that's an ever-growing need. We've just been seeing it now over the last year or so, right? And even more so. So that's something that we have in our mind as well.
I love that you're thinking about it, because one of the homes that I visited, some of the folks said to me, we need to change the rules in the state around UDW and the folks who take care of people, because if you're in an unsheltered place, usually the person is designated to a specific area versus being able to just be, for instance, in a unsheltered, housing unit or something, to be able to help people. So I think that's where I think policy has to keep up with the times, where at the state level and the local level, and we haven't done that much. I took care of my dad with my sisters and my brother when he was very, very, very sick. It was 4 years ago, and he passed in 2022. But those were like really, really tough years where, he was getting dialysis, and he was having to go in and out of hospitals. And, I had the flexibility, even though I was campaigning and running for office, doing all these different things. My sister happens to be a doctor, so she actually, we have that expertise at home. But those are the things that I keep thinking about. I'm like, we have the resources and the tools. We know how to speak the language, and we're having a hard time. I can't imagine others. So I'm really grateful that you're thinking about that. And when you think about seniors and you think about all of these, it's really looking at people from a holistic way, right?
Right.
It's not just meeting people where they're at, but looking at people from a holistic way. So, having, for instance, We know that we had families that had been fighting for decades to get free transportation. They say I'm not supposed to call it that, but it really is free transportation, free public transportation in the county of San Diego. These, señoras and students were fighting for 11 years. They kept saying, no. We had ARPA funding. We were able to lead the efforts in the county. And then in my role as chair of SANDA, we were able to combine it. So now every young person in the county of San Diego under 18 gets to get free transportation, right? And they have been, we started as a pilot program, which is the other thing that I've learned about government. Pilot programs are the best. Mm-hmm. And then, now we have this ability to do that. So how do we do that with seniors? That's my other goal, right? Because in the end, if they want to go work, if they want to go to a cultural center, if they want to just get the basic food and needs, they need transportation.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely.
And so, $40, $20, that's expensive for people, right? That means that you can't buy bread and milk and maybe go eat a taco if you want to, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we need to bring back, the opportunity of, even if you don't have a lot of resources, there has to be dignity in it. And one of the other programs that we did through ARPA was ensuring that we supplemented seniors' income. And we saw that with that amount of money, it really changed their lives, right? And my big thing behind that was, I don't want us to tell you what to do with that money. You should be able to know what you need to do with that money. And like I said, if you want to go buy at a restaurant something, why shouldn't you be able to be allowed? So you only rich people get to go eat at a restaurant? You know what I mean? It has to, you should be able to have opportunities to do whatever you want to do.
Quality of life.
Exactly.
You're right. I mean, the Homeless Coalition in the last number of months put out a statistic, which is very startling and very sobering here in San Diego. 25% of individuals are either food insecure or housing insecure. Yeah. Right. 25%. That includes children. That includes families. Right. Families I referenced before that are falling onto the streets. That's a big number when you think about 25%. That's for our population. That's 750,000 individuals that suffer some level of food insecurity. We see it. You mentioned. People having to come up to a food line or whatever. We have cars actually here at this location. We have on every Friday. We hand out boxes of fresh produce and so forth, non-perishables, and the line of cars has grown over time. I mean, that's again an indication that people are needing this support. We're happy and blessed to be able to provide it, but we should be able to do better as a community, and that's to your point. Now, families, I know you wanted to bring us back to the question of kids.
I'd love to hear about the programs in the county that are specific to children and families, or any interesting initiatives that you've implemented.
I think the Housing Our Youth program is one that I think is really powerful because it allows, access for young people to be able to have homes, right? And I think that's really important. I think being able to have programs like CalWorks and CalFresh programs that, like I said, we were leaving money at the table before, and now actually being able to get people the resources that they need is very powerful and very important, and they continue to be a priority. I think our foster youth have been hugely impacted, right, through COVID and through each one of these programs. And there's been some changes in the structure of the county of San Diego and how we make sure we're addressing just children and youth and being able to prioritize them. And more importantly, they're part of the solution now, right? They are at the table saying, this is what worked for me. This is what did not work for me. How do we move forward? And I think that has changed in the county, because in the county, it wasn't like that before. And I think that you've seen that transformation in the last 4 years. And I think we need to keep going in that direction.
You're empowering them. And, How about at Father Joe's Villages? Can you tell us about the family programs and the food services?
Absolutely. And I referenced the Therapeutic Child Care Center. And that's one of the critical programs that we have for our children in particular are housed within the Therapeutic Child Care Center. I mean, if you think about the fact that the kids who come to us are academically, emotionally, socially delayed, that they're 4 times more apt to be homeless as adults, right? We have to mitigate those circumstances. So that center works with these kids. I mean, and the wonderful thing about the children is that they're so resilient. You provide, the right level of resources, and the compassion and love that you were referring to that before, right? It always warms my heart to see how they bounce back. So we have a preschool program there, and focus is just on that. So providing the resources such as language therapy that they need, speech therapy, all right, what they need in order to be able to keep up with their peers. Once they are of school age, they go off to their respective schools, but then, we give them the support that they need, after school programs and like mentoring and tutoring and so forth, and working with their families as well, building familial relationships, because a lot of these parents don't know how to parent necessarily. So just working on those aspects as well. You mentioned the foster youth. I mean, we support the transitional age youth, which is from 18 to about 24, and they typically have come from the foster care system, right? They lose the support at about age 18, and a lot of them fall onto the streets, right? And so we're blessed to be able to work with them as well. And it's there we're helping individuals apply for college, but these are kids, these are children who are smart, right? These are youth who are smart. What they need is this level of support to be able to excel. I remember, and this was a few years ago, we had someone by the name of David who went through the program, and he wound up at UCLA and doing a PhD.
I love that.
Don't you love that? I love that. I mean, these are individuals who, if you give them the opportunity, they can excel, and that's what they need. To your point, they need that opportunity to be able to excel, and they do it. I mean, we don't do it for them, and they do it, right? You just tap into that potential. So there's just various ways that we provide the support. But in this past year, over 1,000 children we've served, across almost 600 families, right? So, and the need has been growing. We see it day in and day out.
And I think, I failed to mention that our First Five program is one that is such an important program that the county provides, because they're working directly with schools, with parents, with, providers. And it's really, I think, at an early age, being able to identify what are the needs and, meeting their basic needs, but also, right, if young people need to be diagnosed, children need to be diagnosed, being able to get them the services that they need. And again, it goes back to think about the issue of poverty, right? If you come from a family where you can have access to healthcare, those needs that you may have can be met very quickly because you have access to resources. Sometimes in many of our families, because people don't have access to medical care, et cetera, they just end up in situations where if they would have had just the basic needs met from the beginning, they would have different opportunities. And I think, I always think about the fact that, I'm bilingual. And to me, that's a superpower, right? I speak English and Spanish and Spanglish. But I always tell folks, right, if it wasn't for the fact that I was able to master these two languages and be able to communicate and have conversations and all that, for anybody else, it could have been a deficit, right? But somehow along the way, I was able to be in programs and get the resources that I needed, so that I no longer had to translate everything from English to Spanish, but instead actually just getting it done. And so that's a simple example of how programs can actually help people and really help them succeed as they move forward. And then I think the most important piece is that you end up being able to give back.
Absolutely.
The community as a whole becomes healthier. And that's what it's all about. The education. I mean, you mentioned poverty, eradicating poverty. Yes, we should be eradicating poverty. And one way to do that is really to focus on education. Absolutely. I know my parents who came from the island, from Puerto Rico back in the early 50s, they didn't have much education, but they instilled in us that was the way out of poverty, right? And they were ever so right? So that's, when we think of the kids, we have to focus on that. It's a preschool, or as I mentioned, when they go off to school, various schools, is providing the support that they need, instilling in them a sense that is the way out of poverty, right? Because then they can be the Davids of the world who are going for their PhD at UCLA, right? And isn't that great? Yeah.
It's clear that collaboration is absolutely needed through preventative and empowering programs and through resources and meeting people where they are to make the community as a whole healthier.
Yeah, I like I shared with you earlier, today I heard one of the caseworkers say, you need care and compassion and coordination and resources, and that's I think how you make government work for people, and that's the only way you can build stronger and healthier communities, right? You really have to think about all the different components find where our commonalities are and keep pushing forward, because our communities deserve better. And I think that we're in a good place to do that.
Well, I love this. I wish I had another hour to pick your brain.
That just means we have
That's
to invite you
wonderful.
back.
Yes,
Yes.
happy to be back
Yes.
anytime.
Before we leave, what would you like to make your call to action to the community? What would you like community members to do to get involved?
I would say that, that in order for government to work for all, I would like to encourage everyone to be engaged and participate in the process. Sometimes I know that it's hard to believe in government when things are hard, but government can really, really, really do good things for people. And the programs and the services that we provide are there for that, to help alleviate a person's situation during the challenging times. And this is your money, this is your resources. Please use them, because we want you to be, successful. And we want you to have a good quality of life for you and your families, right? Everybody.
Wonderful. Deacon?
Call to action.
Yes.
Well, I always ask people to have compassion. You reference compassion. So when you see someone who's on the streets, don't just assume that it's their fault that they're on the street, right? Recognize that people have different circumstances, right? And I always like the expression, therefore for the grace of God go I, right? I mean, anything can happen. We have teachers and we have engineers and lawyers who wind up needing our services, as an example, right? So because things happen in their lives. So that's number one. I ask people to really, that's a call to action there, but and also to come and join with us, join forces with us at Father Joe's Villages in so many ways. We volunteers. Last year we had over 5,000 volunteers. All right, their services equates to more than almost $2 million. Actually, can you imagine? So the power of volunteering. We have retail stores. At the retail stores, we have people who. We pick up household goods each and every single day, preset appointments, people's homes, and then we take those goods, whether it's furniture or boats or cars or whatever they are, and we either auction them off or sell them at our retail locations, right? And so at great merchandise, good pricing. So it's a win-win. People who can donate, people who can purchase there as well. Donations. I mean, most of the work that we do comes through philanthropy. The vast majority comes through the generosity of the listeners and the viewers who will be listening to us today. And so there's that aspect as well. There's so many ways in which people can get involved. The key is get involved.
Yes.
All right. This is the number one priority. It's in situation here in San Diego. Think about it. Homelessness, as you say, in such a rich society as ours, how can that's a travesty, right? So get involved, be part of the solution.
And come to the 5K.
Come to the 5K. Thank you, Maggie. We have our Supervisor, come to our 5K. We have, this is we're the oldest 5K, Thanksgiving morning, basically.
I know, I've done it many times.
You've
I
done
usually
it.
do it in hiding, because sometimes I don't know if I'm going to run fast enough or not.
Yeah, and you can walk. You can walk. People bring their dogs and they dress them up like turkeys and whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but it's important because talk about meals, that benefits our meals. That million meals that we serve on a yearly basis, the proceeds go to help defray those costs there. And it's just a lot of fun. You can burn off the calories before you consume them in the evening. And most importantly, it's a way of showing, hey, I'm blessed. And I recognize that not everyone is as blessed. And here I am, gives me an opportunity to give back. So yes. We will have, by the way, we start bright and early with Mass in Balboa Park, 6:00, and we'll have 3 of our bishops there with us.
That's amazing.
And so it is amazing. So not everyone comes to the Mass, and it's not required, but the Mass is a great way of kicking it off, and then we go off and have fun.
Yes.
Maybe I can convince my family to make it a family thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Chair Vargas. It was wonderful having you. And thank you, Deacon.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Appreciate
you. Honestly, thank you so much. And for all you do, I'll keep you in my prayers. Keep at it.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.
And thank you for joining in today. Father Joe's Villages has been a beacon of hope for 75 years. And we're not just a service provider, we're a movement and a catalyst for change. Join us on our next episode as we again bring the conversation to you on more important issues and solutions, as ultimately we're all neighbors helping neighbors. See you next time.
God bless you. Thank you.
How will you get involved? Join us and take action for our neighbors in need. Father Joe's Villages is rebuilding lives, and you can make a difference. Whether it's through cash donations, volunteering your time, contributing home goods or clothing, shopping at our thrift stores or online, or participating in planned giving, there are numerous ways to get involved. Take action today at neighbor.org, because together we are all neighbors helping neighbors.